When my problems came, the biggest regret I have is the fact that instead of focusing on God, my first few months were trying to justify why I should not go through what I was going through. My initial prayers were, lakini Mungu surely, unaona venye mimi natoanga tithe, sijui nafanyanga nini, yani umeamua tu ni kuembarrass hivi. But the more the problems became deeper, I started getting an understanding. And I started realizing that since it's a process, part of that process entails refinement. The old you, before God takes you to a higher level, there are things he has to prune out. Kama hiyo self-entitlement, you are kusema you think you're so perfect, you should not fight battles. That is self-entitlement. God has to prune that off. We put so much trust in money. We put so much trust in connections. We put so much trust in our businesses. And sometimes we forget God. You look at the money you have in your account, you're like, niko na 100 million kwa account. Niko fiti, you understand? Sometimes God has to prune that off. Because one of my lowest moments was expecting someone to give me a bailout that never came. The lowest moment wasn't that I prayed to God and he didn't do what I wanted him to do. Is that I stopped praying for a day or 2 or 3, nashinda nikiangalia email. Umongelesha investor amekwambia ni aje tunaweza kudunga hiyo do, hii shida yako si kubwa. So you keep checking your email. Badala ya kufocus na Mungu, you're focusing on a human being. And you know what happens when you take that direction? God has a tendency of fast. Kwanza anajiondoanga kidogo. Now let's see how far this human is going to take you. So for you to be able to move past that, God has to ensure that you can take suffering without compromising your values, without murmuring, because murmuring is another big thing that I've come to realize kind of separates us from God. You should be able to take suffering with grace. You should be able to smile. Why? Not because you trust in your own ability, but because you know there is a God you serve and that God owns the entire world. There's an analogy I normally use about instrument flying. Pilots are trained when flying through storms not to look outside. You're trained not to look outside. The first thing when you go into an instrument flying class, the first lesson, they will blindfold your eyes. And then they will tell you, close your eyes, and they're going to rock the aircraft a couple of times for like a minute. And then the instructor or the person training you will ask you, what do you think the aircraft is doing? In 99% of the time, pilots will say, I think this is now the guy who's blindfolded. This aircraft is probably turning, or this aircraft is probably flying straight. The moment macho inafunguliwango is when you realize the aircraft is actually banked at a very dangerous angle. So they normally use that first lesson to tell you that when you fly through bad weather, you should only trust your instruments. Don't look outside. So ukiwa kwa storm, lightning inapiga, there's so many things happening, the aircraft is being thrown about. I've been into bad storms, and the training always kicks in. I stop looking outside or through the windshield, I start looking at my instruments. If my instruments tell me that the aircraft is turning slightly to the east, I correct based on the instrument. Why? Because this is how the human body works. For you to stand, your body needs 2 things. You need the visual aspect, and you need the balance mechanism that is found in your ear. So when your body is stripped of the visual mechanism and you can't see clearly, your ears tend to give wrong signals to your brain. So you might actually think that you're inverted, but in real sense, you're actually very straight and level. But when you revert to an instrument, your instruments will never lie to you. Never. Now, in real life, the aircraft is your life. You are the pilot. The instrument is God. No matter the storm, it doesn't matter how much lightning you see outside. Your passengers could be screaming. So many things happening. You're talking on the radios. So many things are happening. Your weather radar is looking red. But remember the first rule. look at your instrument. So cultivate a relationship with God. Because the moment you stop trusting your instrument and you start looking outside, you will lose your aircraft. The biggest killer of pilots, the last crash KQ had in 2008, 2007, 2008, one of those years, around August, was caused by spatial disorientation, which is the condition I've described, where the pilots took off into a storm. Instead of focusing on the instruments, they started having conversations. Nobody was paying attention to the instruments. So a whole brand new aircraft turned. Before they realized what was happening, it was too late. The aircraft was lost. Over 100 people died. Life is kind of like the same. Always stay at your instruments. Disregard whatever your body is telling you. Sometimes your body will tell you to quit. Sometimes Satan will tell you to commit suicide. Depression is real. I've personally suffered a bout of depression where for a whole week I couldn't wake up. Nilikuwa nashindanga naamka naangalia Twitter, hey, nimelimwa. Guys are just wow, I'm like, oh God. Wow, aya unatoka hapo, unaenda TikTok. 10 things you didn't know about Khalif Kairo, number 5 will shock you. Aya, unafungua simu yako, upata DCI, when ndio Kairo, we need you at Parklands police station. So what actually saved me is that I reverted back to my training. And nikajiuliza, by the way, am I the one who created myself? No. Have I died? No. So what authority do I have to take my own life? You have no authority to take your own life. The one who created you and the one whom you serve understands why you have to go through that season. Maybe he's preparing you for something great. And we can reference this in the Bible. The book of Psalms is David going through a bout of depression, if you look at it from a normal perspective. Because on one side, David is very angry, he's very frustrated, he's being thrown around by all these storms in his life. And David pia alikapitia. But at the end of it all, he was able to emerge. You understand? At the end of it all, he was able to emerge. Why? Because he never left his reference point. If God tells you, I am with you, you're living according to his rules. Jupia kuna kupitia ujinga, by the way. Let me be very clear. You know there are things you can go through in life because you knowingly put yourself in bad situations. I'm talking about storms in life because even when we fly aircraft, nobody puts themselves in a storm. Storms cook up from nowhere. You could leave Nairobi, go to Mombasa, ukirudi Mombasa somewhere hapo katikati, you run into a very bad storm. So you're not supposed to run away sometimes. Sometimes the simplest way through a storm is through it. You just have to sail your storm and you never have to lose your reference to your instruments.